There's this moment in the sales process that most home improvement companies completely overlook. And it's not the close, it's not the demo, and it's not the follow-up process, even though, most companies do have problems with all of these. What I'm actually talking about today is the handoff, meaning the period between the lead being booked and the rep actually showing up. Because if you're not controlling that moment, if you're not cultivating urgency right there, then the reality is that you are leaving money on the table without you necessarily even knowing it. Now, what most companies try to do about it, if they even notice this problem at all, is solve it in what my opinion is a very lazy way, meaning they'll run discounts. They'll say things like, we've got a promotion ending this week, or we're doing 10% off for people who book today. But in reality, you don't actually need to lower your prices to be able to create urgency. Instead, you just need to know how to build urgency into your appointment setting system, and all of a sudden, not only will you have more leads showing up, but your close rate will actually increase with it as well. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we train our reps to create urgency without compromising our clients' margins, their brand, or their positioning. So let's actually break this down. What I found is that most teams confuse urgency with pressure, when in reality, urgency is about energy and momentum, whereas pressure is about fear, tension, and in many cases, offering discounts, right? And when companies blur these two ideas, what they often end up with is either A, customers who just kind of delay, B, customers who show some sort of restraint or pushback, or C, customers who just don't show up at all. But what these companies have failed to understand, which would have stopped them from mistaking urgency for pressure, is that urgency isn't something that needs to actually be manufactured. Instead, it's something that needs to be protected. And for reps that understand that one reality, it is an absolute game changer. Because what is very important to remember is that every single lead that comes in has come in for a reason. They click the ad for a reason, and they answer the phone from a number that they've probably never seen before for a reason as well. So as a rep, the job is very simple. You just need to reconnect them with that reason and then move them forward while that feeling is still fresh. So let's actually talk about how we go about doing that. So when our reps get people on the phone, we don't just jump straight into scheduling. Instead, we understand the importance of starting by reactivating that emotional trigger. So we can ask something like this. Hey, so what's going on around the home that made you actually want to get this looked at now? Now, what you may or may not have realized here is that the word now does most of the heavy lifting in the sentence. What it's aimed to do is quietly nudge the customer to reconnect with their own urgency, meaning, the reason that they decided to actually fill out the form in the first place, without coming across as pushy, right? Which means that now you're not having to chase them, and instead they're beginning to move themselves back into motion. And this here is the key to setting up appointments naturally while simultaneously cultivating the urgency that, we're so desperately looking for. Because it's not about having to convince them. It's simply about aligning them with the reason why they reached out in the first place. Now, the next trap that I found, the majority of setters at companies fall into is offering passive time slots. So what that means is they'll say something like this. Okay, great. So we've got Wednesday afternoon or Friday morning. Any time slots in those time zones kind of work for you, right? And when I see this or, wording like this on a sales script, I understand that whoever's in charge of their appointment setting system doesn't understand how to cultivate urgency and, build the correct framing for their sales reps to actually be ready to close deals. Because what they've done here is not create urgency, but instead just provided a very broad range of options. And, while options may logically seem like they're good, right? In practice, they actually just slow things down. So instead, we teach our reps to speak in terms of movement. So for example, we may say something like this. Okay, that sounds good. So Matt, I've just taken a look at our calendar here and we've actually got a few reps in your area tomorrow. we could have someone swing by around 2 or 6. Which one works better for you? Were you able to kind of hear the shift right there, right? Now it's not about you being available, it's about your business already moving and the customer being slotted into that movement. Not only have we provided a time slot within 24 hours while the urgency is still high, but we've also positioned our company as one that is busy and in demand by people just like them in their area. And trust me, prospects would much rather work with a company that's in demand than one that's sitting around all day waiting for someone to ask them to come in. Now, the last thing that I'll talk about today that I've kind of found to kill urgency is framing appointments as this kind of really big commitment. So once you've actually got a lead qualified and you've built up enough pain where they know they need to kind of solve this problem, you don't actually want to apply more pressure at that point. Instead, you want to recognize that now is the time that you actually want to lower that friction. So oftentimes when creating scripts, and in all fairness, this is a part of the script that has many different options per script and will kind of be unique from company to company. But to kind of give you a super surface level look at kind of how we think about reducing friction, each script wants to have something along these lines. So we're just going to come out, take a look, and give you some clear options. That way, you've got everything in front of you and there's no pressure either way. Now, the phrase "no pressure either way" is a subtle but powerful phrase. And what it's aimed to do is protect the pace that we've been building kind of throughout the call, but we don't want to trigger that buyer's resistance. And when reps use this kind of language consistently, you start getting more same day and next day appointments without giving anything away on price. So to kind of give you a quick example of how these seemingly subtle changes can actually have real world impacts, I worked with a basement company out of Ohio. This company did about $8 million of revenue, primarily operating on paid inbound lead flow, and they had a decent brand presence in the state. But when we audited their numbers, which by the way, many companies don't even track their numbers well, so kudos to them for actually having a good tracking system. Here's the kind of data that we found. 48% of their appointments were being booked 4 or more days out, which, if you follow this channel, is a huge no-no. And as you would have expected, their close rate on these appointments was way lower than the average at just 17%. Now, their reps were offering time slots like they were kind of like booking haircuts. They created no urgency, there was no real structure. They just kind of, gave these prospects a calendar and just said, hey, book in whenever works for you. So when I went to work with these reps, all I did was change the way that their setters, 1, reactivated their homeowners' pain, 2, kind of anchored the appointments to the company's activity, not their availability, wherever it was possible, and 3, lowered the pressure on the prospect with clearer framing of what to expect in the appointment. And within 3 weeks, same day and next day bookings jumped 41%. Their overall booking cancellation rate dropped by nearly half. And within 9 months of working with us and refining their sales systems, their overall close rate from inbound appointments went from 26% to 35%, resulting in over $2 million worth of additional revenue, allowing them to jump from 8 million to almost 10.5 million the following year. And to do this, they didn't need to do any additional discounting. They didn't need to use any additional ad spend. Instead, they just had a cleaner call flow and a better system in place. And this is what we train our reps to do. They're not just taught to book calls, they're taught to recognize urgency signals, to protect time slots that we know convert, to kind of keep the entire flow tight from that first contact all the way through to the final close. Meaning that for home improvement companies like yours, we build a system, we manage a team, and you simply get to see a higher ROI on the marketing dollars that you're already paying for without necessarily having to spend a dime extra if you don't want to. So if you're watching this and thinking, hey, we're probably losing deals the same way. Listen, you're not alone, because the reality that most people don't even realize is that almost every other company is as well. And if you want to see an increase in your booking rates while paying less than what you would be able to hire and train your own reps, and frankly, they probably wouldn't perform as well, then make sure to reach out. And I'll show you exactly how we approach this whole process and, see whether it actually makes sense for you guys. And of course, if this was valuable, then subscribe to the channel and share this video with your team. I post breakdowns on how to make more money with your current lead flow, just like this, every single week. Thank you, and see you in the next.